Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Congress DS JJ Suarez.
curious lang ako dito sa pagbubuhat nung
Duffel
duffel bag.
bag.
Oo. Comsec, meron kasi akong hiram na duffel bag dito. Pakita mo nga kung ito yung ganito kalaki yung duffel bag. Mama, ganyan kalaki?
Opo. Meron pa yatang mas malaki.
Hindi. So,
Pero
ganyan
mas-
kalaki o mas malaki dyan?
Mas malaki po ng konti.
Yung bag po nang galing sa OVP o galing sa Land Bank?
Dala po ni client, OBP.
So dala po nila yung bag. So handa na po sila para kunin yung pera.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So ilang milyon kada bag ang nailalagay?
Sila po kasi yung nag-insert na po dun sa bag, naglagay sa bag from the teller. Nung ni-release po ng teller, sila na po ang nag-divide dun sa bags.
Without the supervision of Land Bank or under the supervision of Land Bank?
Witness pa rin po ng nag-release na teller.
So thank you that we invited the teller. Now question, I can imagine kung 4 na bag yun, 125 divided by 4, more or less would be around 30, 35. You know, my math isn't so good. Kaso lang, I would imagine, mabigat po yun.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So ilang tao ang kinikailangan, mga 31 million, no? 31 million, tama. So ilang tao ang napansin ninyo na bumubuhat nung isang bag?
As par po na remember ko,
Pakilapit po yung mic.
sa pagkakaalala ko po, 2.
So, 2 kada bag. Actually, that was my point kasi kung mabigat po yun, I would imagine. So, kung 2 tao kada bag, 4 na bag, yun po ay binabalikan ng 2 tao o more than 2 people accompany Ms. Acosta to withdraw the cash?
More than 2 people po.
More than 2. So, are you saying 4? How many individuals?
More or less po sa pagka-remember ko.
What about you, Attorney Lopez? You've been working with Gina Acosta for quite a number of years. How old is Miss Gina Acosta?
Your Honor, I would suppose not yet 60, but maybe 50, mid-50s.
59, Chairman.
59.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for informing me. And what is her build?
Similar, as mentioned earlier by Director Sanchez.
So, would you say that it will be physically impossible for someone of the same build as Attorney Sanchez to carry one duffel bag by herself?
I cannot. Yes, it would be physically impossible.
It would be physically impossible. Kaya nga nangailangan sila ng 4 na tao. So therefore, Mr. Chair, I would like to support the motion of Congressman Paduano. It is also important for us to find out kung sino pa yung 4 na tao na kasama ni Gina Acosta mag-withdraw ng 125 million pesos sa Land Bank. Land Bank, as a matter of procedure, pag meron po bang mga pumapasok na tao para mag-withdraw ng ganito kalaking pera, nasa logbook nyo naman po yun, di ba?
Yung
As a
pong-
security measure, I would assume, a withdrawal of this amount would require certain signatories and IDs to be presented.
sa guards logbook po ba yung we're talking po?
No, either the guard's logbook or the bank record logbook.
Sa bank records po, wala po kaming logbook na mini-maintain as to the...
So, ang nasa
recording
inyo, basta si Gina Acosta ang nakapirma. Hindi nyo
Opo.
na isinama doon yung mga kasama niya para dalhin yung pera.
Wala po, Mr. Chair.
Wala. But doon sa logbook ng guard, nandun yun?
I'm not so sure, Mr. Chair. We'll
Siguro
check po.
magandang malaman din natin kasi critical sa atin malaman yung mga individual. Sino po yung finance
Mr. Chair.
department? Yes, yes. Very quickly, but I'll just before I lose my point, Vice Chairman Benny, sino po yung finance and admin head? Yeah, Attorney Sanchez. So, sino po ang kasama ni Gina Acosta tuwing magwi-withdraw po ng pera ng confidential fund ng Office of the Vice President?
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Attorney
Yes.
Sanchez.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as mentioned earlier, from the end of finance, once we release the check to the payee, we do not have participation.
No. That's not my question, ma'am. My question is, di ba, you're handling admin as well. So, human resource, employees. So, 125 million is a big amount. And I would expect some sense of security would be implemented by the Office of the Vice President. Kasi tama yung sinabi ni Congressman Garin eh. Baka mamaya magka-interest doon na nalaman na isang tao na kasing laki mo lang ang may buhat-buhat 125 million. Talagang pwedeng pagtangkaan na nakawan yon. So dapat may kasamang tao, may magsisecure. So who were those persons who accompanied Gina Acosta withdraw that money?
Mr. Chair, as to the security arrangements for the withdrawal of the money, I was not part of the arrangements, Mr. Chair, so it was not relayed to me, Mr. Chair. But
Mr. Chair, I
reminders-
think that would be an answer I cannot accept, Mr. Chair, kasi kayo po ang tagapamahala nun eh. Kayo ang pumirma ng cheque. In fact, it was so quick that all four of you signed the check on the same day. There was haste in the office to withdraw that cash. So I would expect that in the same manner, you would also secure that fund. Kasi dito nga, December 20 ba yun? Sabay-sabay yung pinirmahan yung disbursement voucher eh. Actually, nagulat nga ako, sobrang bilis ninyo eh. 3 signatory, isang araw, nagawa ninyo eh. So ipinakita nyo na minamadali nyong makuha yung pera. So ang tanong ko, sa pagmamadali ninyo, siguro naman, tiniyak nyo rin, dahil nga nagmadali kayo, mahalaga sa inyo to, sisiguraduhin naman natin na secure yung pera. Ang tanong ko, oras na ibinigay nyo yung cheque sa Land Bank, sino ang kasama ni Gina Acosta i-withdraw yung pera?
Mr. Chair, respectfully, I really have no personal knowledge as to the companions of the special disbursement
Because, Mr. Chair,
officer.
this did not happen only once. It happened in December, it happened in January, it happened again, I think, sometime in April. I can be wrong, and maybe again in September. Tama ba ako? Ms. Sanchez, parang ganun yung dates, di ba?
The last one was in July, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. So, it happened 4 times. So, Mr. Chair, Ma'am Villa del Rey, kayo, malalaman nyo ba kung sinong kasama ni Gina Acosta nung withdraw yung pera?
Ma'am Villa del Rey, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't have knowledge po kung sino yung companion ni Ms. Gina Acosta.
Kasi alam mo, Mr. Chair, ang nakakapagtaka dito sa Office of the Vice President, mabilis silang pumirma ng disbursement voucher para mag-issue ng cheque, tumawag pa sila in advance sa Land Bank para siguraduhin na may pera ang bangko para withdraw yung pera. Kaso lang, wala naman silang nilalagay na action para pangalagaan yung pera. Ni nga paglalagyan ng 125 million, wala na silang pakialam kung saan nila ilalagay. Kasi ang sinabi ni Ms. Sanchez kanina, yung vault ay para lang sa petty cash. Sabi niya may cabinet doon, but I doubt you'll put 125 million pesos in a cabinet. Not unless that cabinet is secured and large enough to hold that amount. So what I don't understand, Mr. Chair, is how come they are so reckless and carefree with such a huge amount? And this is just 125 million. We're not even talking about the 37 million that was withdrawn from the DepEd. So for me, Mr. Chair, this is unacceptable.
Sandaling katanungan lang kay Attorney Lopez, no? Attorney Lopez, pagdating ba sa security, lalong-lalo na pag nagwi-withdraw, no, ang inyong SDO ng ganyang kalalaking pera, hindi ba nakikipag-coordinate sa inyo na security yan, usually pag nagwi-withdraw ng pera?
Attorney Lopez.
Dahil ikaw ang Chief of Staff, ikaw ang namumuno ng mga staff ng Office of the Vice President. Lahat ng mga tao rito, under sa'yo yan, sigurado. So they report directly to you, being the Chief of Staff. Ngayon, tanong ko, hindi ba humingi ng security si Madam Acosta sa pag-withdraw ng ganyang kalaking pera?
And, Your Honor, in this case, I am the Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Office of the Vice President, but there are certain matters that are not within my area of expertise. I handle purely, Your Honor, all the institutionalization and implementation of all our socio-economic projects. And in this particular case, Your Honor, as regards the matter of security, etc., these are admin concerns.
Tama po, sa mga proyekto ng Office of the Vice President at kasama sa mga proyekto ng Office of the Vice President, yung paggamit ninyo ng confidential fund na winidraw ni Ms. Acosta. Siyempre po, kayo po ang nakakaalam kung saan at paano ito ginagastos. Tama po ba?
Your Honor, Mr. Chair,
Dahil programa po, kasasabi niyo po, programa ng Office of the Vice President.
Your Honor, may I be allowed to, just to put things in context, I actually I oversee the daily operations of the Office of the Vice President. For that matter, a big volume of the work that I do is actually to, number one, institutionalize and implement all our socio-economic programs. For that matter, Your Honor, implementation of all, institutionalizing programs would mean it's more of crafting policies, producing operational manuals, and ensuring that our socio-economic programs are implemented uniformly and equally across our satellite offices and extension offices across the country. For that matter, Your Honor, I am also
Madam, hindi niyo po sinasagot yung katanungan ko eh. Pinapaganda niyo lang po yung explanation ninyo eh. Opo, pakisagot na lang po ng diretso para nakakahiya po sa kasama ko sa Kongreso. Pakisagot na lang po ng diretso.
Your Honor, with all due respect, yun po yung role ko sa Office of the Vice President. It is really, another would be to handle all forms of communication, whether internal or external communications.
Kaya nga po, wala po ba kayo natanggap na request coming from kay Gina Acosta para sa security ng paglalabas ng pera sa Land Bank? Dahil malaking pera po yun na para sa mga proyekto po ninyo. Katulad nga po ng sinasabi mo.
In my case, Your Honor, for this instance, there is no request for security, but I would assume because security falls under admin concerns, it would really be best addressed to the Director for Admin, Your Honor.
Pero dahil maliit po yung opisina ninyo, alam po ninyo na nag-withdraw po ng ganong kalaking pera si Ms. Acosta nung araw na yon.
No, Your Honor, because again, there are matters in the office that I am not privy to, Your Honor. So,
Ma'am, parang ang lumalabas, hindi alam nung admin, hindi rin alam ng Chief of Staff. So parang nakakaalam lang nito si Gina Acosta at saka si BP. Tama ba?
Your Honor,
Parang hindi naman po kapanipaniwala na yung security lang, simple security reason. Request, hihingin pa ni Gina Acosta kay BP.
Your Honor, that is the truth. There is no request for security to me as regards that.
At
And
parang
there has
hindi rin
never
naman
been-
po kapanipaniwala na didiskarte lang nun si Gina Acosta mag-isa.
Your Honor, I am not given the roles that I play and I perform and the functions that I perform in the Office of the Vice President. I am not really privy.
Mr. Chair, parang napaka-imposible po na ikaw ang Chief of Staff, na under sa'yo yung
At
mga
saka
tao
yung-
na yan,
And
na
yung
hindi mo
pera
alam
pong-
ko.
Yung pera pong
Quite
pinag-uusapan
impossible,
natin,
Mr. Chair.
125 million, pag pumunta po sa opisina, alangan mo wala lahat kayo nakita. Congressman Akop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clarification lang po. Sino po ang finance ng OBP?
Yes.
Attorney Sanchez.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ako po, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. You were aware na 125 million yung confidential fund ng opisina ni Vice President for 2022.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And would you know, kailan po ko yung na-notify na na-download na yung amount na yun doon sa Office of the Vice President?
It's December 13, Mr. Chair, if I recall it correctly.
December 13 of 2022.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
May I know why?
Mr. Chair, the Office of the Vice President requested for additional funding from the DBM, not only for the provision of confidential funds, but also for a supplemental budget for our socio-economic programs.
No. So the Vice President requested for confidential fund. Kailan po yun?
Sometime in August, Mr. Chair.
Tapos nagrantan lang ng December.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
December 13. Okay. Now, may I ask Lan Bang, when was the amount withdrawn?
For the OBP, I think for the 2022, December 20, I think we'll check the documents.
December
20,
2022.
2022 for the first
One
check.
time na withdrawal.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
One time. Ang nag-withdraw, yung pong SDO, Special Dispersing Officer.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Madam, would you know si Attorney Sanchez? Would that be correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Bakit ginastos nyo kaagad ito nung period na yon, when in fact you would have obligated it and you would have used it in 2023?
Mr. Chair, I do not have knowledge on the actual utilization, but in terms of the cash advance, Mr. Chair, there is no prohibition as to whether we can give the cash advance in 2022, Your Honor.
Di, kayo po ang mas marunong siguro sa SDO, ba't hindi nyo na lang sinabihan when the notice of cash allocation ay na-receive nyo ng December 13, bakit hindi nyo na lang inobligate so that it will not be returned to the National Treasury? Kung na-obligate ninyo, you can use it in 2023. Di po ba, kung titignan nyo yung budget, merong unused appropriations. Number one is unobligated appropriations. At saka number two is yung hindi na-issue sa inyo. Bakit inapuran ninyo?
Mr. Chair, for the obligation of cash of the confidential expenses, it is triggered by the issuance of the cash advance, Mr. Chair, and the documents for the request for the release of the cash advance was received by the accounting division and the budget division on December 20, Mr. Chair.
Kaya nga, na-receive niya ngayon, December 13, tapos pinaspasan nyo ng pag-liquidate. Di po ba? And therefore, nagkamali-mali na yung inyong opisina na pag-liquidate.
Mr. Chair, as to the issuance of the cash advance, as of the time that the cash advance was issued, we did not have information on the period that it will be used because it can be used even after December 31, Mr. Chair.
Kaya ngayon nga yung katanungan ngayon December 13, nakuha nyo yung na meron ng cash for the confidential funds. the first thing that you would have done is that hindi natin magagamit itong 125 billion within 11 days. Tama?
Mr. Chair, there is no requirement under the joint circular to use it within the 11-day period because it's for one quarter.
Ginamit nyo nga sa liquidation ninyo. You use it for 11 days. That's why your office committed mistakes in the liquidation. Kasi inapuran nyo When in fact, pwede naman yung i-obligate yun at saka nyo na lang i-liquidate. Di po ba?
Again, Mr. Chair, I would like to state for the record that I do not have knowledge on the actual utilization and disbursement from the confidential fund cash advance.
I'm amazed kasi kayo in charge ng finance sa office ng OBP, you do not know this. It's surprising on my part kasi I've worked with the controllership. Kaya nga ako nagtataka Bakit pinilit ninyo na i-liquidate o gamitin yung pondo, 125 million in 11 days? Something must be wrong somewhere. Di po ba? Sabihin nyo sa akin, normal ba yun? Na 125 million gamitin mo in 11 days? As a finance officer.
Mr. Chair, for the 125 million, I do not have personal knowledge, but
Hindi. Ang tanong ko po, sagutin ninyo. Sa tingin po ninyo, being with finance, normal ba na gamitin yung 125 million in 11 days?
Mr. Chair, that would
Yes or no?
depend, Mr. Chair, on the nature of the transactions, Mr. Chair.
Are you
So-
trying to tell me that you could come up with transactions within 11 days, 5 of which are holidays?
Mr. Chair,
Pakisagot lang po.
Mr. Chair, in the government, there are transactions which exceed that amount, and the payment is
Like what, for
can be,
example?
purchases, Mr. Chair, but there may be purchases, Mr. Chair, that exceed that amount, or payment for other transactions, Mr. Chair, like
In the office of the OVP, anong transaction na ganun?
in the OVP, Your Honor, wala po kaming ganun transaction.
Kaya huwag mo akong pagsabihan ng ganun, Iha. Kasi, you're coming up with stories or events na wala kang ebidensya. You're a lawyer, right?
Yes,
When
Mr.
you
Chair.
say something, hihingan kita ng ebidensya. Wala kang may pakita sa akin
Yes, Mr. Chair. That's why early on I stated for the record,
Hindi,
Mr. Chair.
pero for a finance officer, you do not know na it is unusual for you to use 125 million in 11 days, 5 of which are holidays. Ako, naging controller ako, alam ko na imposible. Kaya ang ginagawa ng amin ay ino-obligate namin para magamit namin sa next year. At may liquidate namin ng tama, hindi yung ginawa po ninyo. Diba? Attorney, if you're really well-versed sa finance, dapat alam mo yun.
Mr. Chair, again, for the confidential expenses and the handling of the confidential fund, cash advance for confidential fund, hindi po ako involved sa process, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. For the confidential fund of DepEd, Land Bank, ito ba yung 3 quarters of 37.5 million each? One time din ba na winidraw ito?
3 withdrawals, 37.5
So,
each.
ano yun? Every quarter?
I will check our records, sir. I cannot remember anymore.
So, pwedeng sinasabi ninyo, in 1 month, na-withdraw lahat to.
We will check our records, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hindi rin masagot
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Congressman Acop. Yes, Congressman Flores.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to make a follow-up on my suggestion kanina regarding Attorney Sanchez. Do we have that data already as to where I'm actually just concerned about the SDOs, si Fajarda and Acosta. Actually, si Attorney Ortonio doesn't need to be here. Attorney Lopez is already here, being the boss, di ba? I'm sure she could answer the questions that would be asked of Ortonio. But about, I just need to know where Fajarda and Acosta are, if they are on official travel.
Mr. Chair, I checked with the Central Records Unit of the Office of the Vice President. They are on official travel,
Where? What city po? What town?
but the travel order only indicated various areas. Mr.
Various.
Chair.
Nandali lang. Sorry, natawa ako dun. Various areas of what po? The Philippines, this planet, or the universe? Parang labo naman ng... You don't know where these persons are?
I have no personal knowledge, Your Honor.
At Attorney Lopez, you're the Chief of Staff. Wala ba tayong idea man lang, Luzon, Visayas, or Mindanao ba ang activity? Or... Kasi most of the questions that have been asked, to be fair, could have been answered by these two persons. They're really the ones that are needed here to answer the questions of the members of this committee. So, ang tanong ko lang po, if they are really on official travel, saan po?
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, if I may read the travel order in toto. All right. Just a moment. Travel Order 2024-1037. In the interest of public service, Edward D. Fajarda is hereby authorized to travel on official business to continue the monitoring and facilitation of the preparations and rollout of the OVP anniversary activities in various areas on November 18 to 22, 2024. And then the second would be while outside of his official station, he is authorized to collect allowance for daily travel expenses, incur actual travel expenses in accordance with Executive Order number 77, chargeable against OVP funds, subject to existing budgeting.
So parang
accounting.
general po yung travel order nila, travel authority nila. But who would be the person in the OVP who could at least give an idea as to where or what part of the Philippines they are in now?
Your Honor, as mentioned early on, we do have a rollout of
Kaya nga, but I'm sure,
But the
meron naman tong assignments. Ikaw, doon ka. Ikaw, dito ka. Di, imposible naman na all over lang sila, di ba? Sino po ang may alam niyan? Kasi, again, I'm gonna repeat why I want them here. Because most of the questions are actually directed to them, di ba?
We understand, Your
Eh,
Honor.
pangit naman, kayo tinatanong, ipapasa niyo lang din na dapat sila. It could have been, properly done kung nandito din sila. And we've been treating you fairly naman, di ba? None of you have been cited in contempt. You're all here. You're all eating your own food nga, di ba? I noticed. I think it's better than our food. Di ba? So,
I do understand, Your Honor, but as mentioned earlier, number one, I have not really gone through that.
Again, I'm just asking for who among the officers of the OVP would have an idea as to their exact whereabouts? None? Kasi if you're a government officer, di ba? You're assigned to travel. Aren't you supposed to show that this is my certificate of appearance, I went to this particular office to justify your travel? Tama po ba? Di ba? So saan ngayon ang pinupuntahan nila? Is it any of the offices, satellite offices of the OVP? No one will answer?
On my end, Your Honor, I really have no personal knowledge. Kasi ang nabasa ko rin po is various areas.
Who gave the travel authority?
May I see again? Just a moment, please.
Sige.
The travel authority was signed by the Assistant Chief of Staff, Your Honor, Mr. Ortonio.
Pinapa-excuse ko na sana. Diba? So, he's your assistant, right? Can you not call him up and say, where are these persons ba? I'm just interested with Acosta and Fajarda.
I will try to reach out to him, Your Honor.
Oh, so you cannot contact your assistant, chief of staff?
Because when I arrived, as mentioned earlier, yes, I arrived only and reported to the office yesterday. I have not seen him, actually.
Kaya nga, but I'm sure there are means of communication. He being your assistant. In this day and age, I'm sure someone could get in touch with Anyone? Would you not agree, Attorney Lopez?
I will try to reach
Okay, I'll
out.
give you a few minutes, ha? Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. With the indulgence
Chairman.
of Congressman Rog Gutierrez, the chair would like to recognize Congressman Paduano.
Thank you, Congrats and the Chair. Now, ma'am, alam mo, looking back, no, balikan ko lang yung excuse letter nung nakaraan. For example, in the case of Gina Acosta, may travel authority siya, di ba, that time? And her travel was, during the time was, I think, in Bacolod City, sa satellite office. Malinaw po doon sa travel authority niya. Sinabit niyo po rito. Nakaspecify po yung date at saka place. Andito ngayon si Doc Chris Turungon, in charge of the satellite office in Western Visayas. And during that hearing, I think if my memory serves me right, that was the second invitation. And that was the excuse of Gina Acosta with an official travel order doon po sa Bacolod City, satellite office. Now, today, ang problema nyo kasi, ma'am, Attorney Sanchez, alam mo ba, ang problema nyo kasi ngayon, nilalabas nyo na walang specific area. Ma'am, talagang tinatago nyo. Alam mo bakit? Kasi supposedly, after the travel, if she goes back to your office, may certificate of appearance. And that certificate of appearance dapat coincide o inconsistent with the travel authority. For example, nakastipulate on Bacolod City o Region 6 satellite office. Eh yung certificate of appearance siya sa ibang satellite office. Will you honor it? Ma'am? Attorney? Will you honor it?
No, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no. That's why, wag niyong gamitin palusot dito na walang specific time, date, and place. Ma'am, lastly, I just want to warn you. Don't you know, by telling in this committee, you're violating Section 11 of our rules. Letter F po, undue interference. That's our internal rules. You're violating Section 11 of letter F, paragraph F of our rules. Undue interference during scheduled hearing by the committee. I just want to inform you, ma'am. And if you want to check it, you can check it in our website. Nandyan po yun, attorney. You're a lawyer, you know that.
Yes. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, Attorney
Mr. Chair, may I
Sanchez.
be allowed to respond, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
please.
Mr. Chair, earlier I was asked to check for records for the travel orders. So that's what I did, Mr. Chair. I just checked, and from the report of our Central Records Unit, they provided me with copies of the travel orders, Mr. Chair. So for the period of November 10 to 15, Mr. Chair, that is what was mentioned by Honorable Congressman Paduano, that Ms. Gina Acosta traveled to a satellite office, and the place is specific. But, Mr. Chair, another travel order was issued for the period of November 18 to 22, Mr. Chair. And I'm just basing it, my statement.
And who signed that
on the record.
travel order?
As mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, it was Assistant Chief of Staff, Lemel Ortonio.
And he's not present also.
Yes, that is
Eh,
correct.
pare-pareho sila.
Who signed the travel order of Ordonio?
For the travel, wait, Mr. Chair. For the travel, order number 2024-983, and that covers the period of November 11 to 15. signatory of the travel order is the Vice President, Your Honor, in accordance with our
Yung
office
ngayon,
order.
sino yung nag-sign ng Travel Authority? Ito ngayon.
Mr. Chair, for the travel of Ms. Acosta, Attorney Fajarda and Mr. Fajarda, the signatory is Mr. Ortonio. In
Mr.
accordance
Ortonio.
with our
And he's
office
also
order.
absent
That
today.
is- Yes, Mr. Chair.
Paano siya sasagot? But ma'am, last question lang po, attorney. Regular ba yon? Yung ngayon? Regular ba o irregular? Yung travel authority na yan? In your own experience and based on the practices, supposedly the practices in your office, is it regular or irregular? Without dates, without the specific place?
Mr. Chair, it's not common, Mr. Chair. This is the first time
So that's irregular.
that is not usual, Mr. Chair.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, ako, attorney, I have just cited our internal rules, no? I hope you will answer truthfully so that this committee will not be forced to cite you in contempt. Ganun lang po. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair. But as
Mr.
mentioned,
Chair.
my responses were based on documents.
Ma'am, as I've told you, you're a lawyer, alam mo po. Salamat po, Chairman.
Thank you, but
Mr.
at
Chair,
this point,
can we request Kong Paduano to extend this request? Mr. Chair, can we request Kong Paduano, since he's already posting questions and looking for Ma'am Acosta, maybe they can call her over the phone kasi on official travel naman siya, so she's still active and performing her duties.
pwede po ba
The finance
pakitawagan na
officer,
lang po
Attorney
ninyo
Sanchez
si
and Attorney Lopez.
Ma'am Acosta?
I will try, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The chair would like to recognize Congressman Rog Gutierrez. Rog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just a few questions lang po to continue. I think the committee has already expressed its interest by asking already in Land Bank na pagtaka po talaga yung issue po of the money trail. I think we have established that the cash withdrawn from the Land Bank representing the confidential funds are taken out by the SDO in cash. Hindi pa napadeposit sa Land Bank. And it is in the personal cost of the SDO, which is in line with the joint circular. However, this is 125 million in cash, and in the case of DepEd, 37.5 million per quarter in cold hard cash. But what is not sure yet is where Ms. Acosta and Mr. Fajardo have brought the cash. I think we've established the line so far with the tellers. We're still going to have to establish that at least from the Land Bank up until the deposit. From the release of the check up to the encashment in Land Bank. We've seen that so far, but we still have yet to establish where the cash goes after that. And we have some further questions po in relation to this. Kasi po, ang nakikita po natin, based on the testimonies, even from the last hearing, in the question of confidential funds, it all points to two people po. In the case of DepEd, at least, it's pointing to the SDO and the head of agency, in which case that would be Mr. Fajarda and then Secretary Duterte. And of course, for the OVP, although interestingly, based on our last hearing, it actually was pointed to three people. If we recall the testimony of Attorney Sanchez, she actually mentioned that, based from her knowledge, the persons who would have knowledge of this confidential funds would be the SDO, si Ms. Acosta, the head of agency, which is VP Duterte, and the Chief of Staff, Ms. Zuleika Lopez. So in line with this, just to clarify, I'd like to ask a few questions po, no, kay Attorney Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman. Attorney Lopez, nabanggit po yung pangalan po ninyo last hearing. Just to refresh your memory, I'm sure at the time you were busy po with your personal concerns. We were asking si Attorney Sanchez po and si Ms. Ville del Rey about the processes within the OVP and the disbursement of the confidential funds. And it was mentioned, I believe, specifically by Attorney Sanchez, what we've established, at least with Ms. Ville del Rey, is that wala po silang kinalaman sa disbursement ng confidential funds. Ang alam lang po ng Chief Accountant is the requirements and that they would have to submit for the release of the check. And kasama rin po dito si Attorney Sanchez. However, Attorney Sanchez, I believe, made that statement that past that point, and what we've established with the Land Bank, the personalities involved with the confidential funds would be the SDO, the VP, and yourself. However, we take note po, Ms. Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman, most respectfully, na binigit po ninyo that you're only concerned with operations. And by operations, you're talking, I guess, about the social amelioration program ng Office of the Vice President. Is that correct, Ms. Lopez?
That is correct, Your Honor. That is my role as Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Office of the Vice President.
Ms. Lopez, I hope you Attorney Lopez, I hope you understand how we would be, how we would find that quite confusing, because generally the idea of a chief of staff would be second to the head of the agency, and by virtue of that, everyone else in that department would be under the chief of staff. Generally, that's how it works. Our understanding is that in the OVP, how many USEC positions are there? May we ask?
There's only one Undersecretary position, Your Honor.
And the undersecretary position is that of the chief of staff, correct?
That is correct.
So generally, including the SDO, although they have specific responsibilities under the circular regarding to the confidential funds, they are still under your supervision as the USEC.
The SDOs, Your Honor, do not report to me.
They don't report to you, although
do.
you are the most senior official after the Vice President in the...
Your Honor, if I may be allowed to, Sir Congressman Gutierrez, if I may be allowed to explain my answer. In the Office of the Vice President, although I am the Undersecretary and the Chief of Staff, I am purely handling, as I mentioned, operational concerns. There are areas, for example, that I am not privy to, one of which is the matter of confidential expenses. But as regards the institutionalization of the projects, implementation of the projects, communications that come through the office, internal, issuances of memo, issuances of special orders, etc., they go through me. And also, for external communications, Your Honor, for example, there is a request for referral to the, for example, the DSWD or the Department of Health. All these matters, Your Honor, are coursed to the Office of the Chief of Staff. And all communications emanate also from the Office of the Chief of Staff, external, especially to those national government agencies. On top of that, Your Honor, I handle the day-to-day operations of, there is a clustering in the Office of the Vice President. For example, as I'm in the case of Director Lin, she handles the finance cluster, which is budget, accounting, GSD, no, is under you, the procurement. That is her AOR. On my end, Your Honor, I handle the frontline delivery of administrative support, such as Disaster Operations Center, Legal Affairs Division, and also the protocol team. Those are matters that I have direct hand into and information I am privy to. So yun lang po yung aking areas of concern. And there are areas actually in the Office of the Vice President, katulad, for example, let me just cite, if you allow me, sir, the matter of the appointments or the scheduling of the courtesy calls, etc., on the Vice President. Although it may be true that high-ranking officials call me and say na, USEC, attorney, confirm mo naman yung aming appointment with the Vice President. This is something that I have no say, direct say to, because this is all done by the appointments team. In the same manner, the protocol team of the Vice President, although all the members of the Diplomatic Corps call me as the head of the agency, as the highest official and as the Chief of Staff, it does not guarantee them that there will be a scheduled courtesy call, because these are matters that are determined purely on that end. So it's I think it's a compartmentalized kind of setup, Your Honor, that there are only certain functions and tasks that I am privy to, in which case that is the one that I have mentioned earlier. But although I would wish to answer really respectfully as regards the matter of the confidential expenses, it is something that I have not really been privy to from the very beginning. So, in the case of the earlier questions by Congressman Acop, rather, it is something that I cannot really answer because I am not privy to the disbursement, utilization, nor liquidation of the confidential funds. So, ganun po siya, Your Honor. That is how it is run in the Office of the Vice President.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Attorney Lopez. Well, I only mentioned
Thank
that
you.
because it was the words of Attorney Sanchez that mentioned that you would probably be privy to the disbursement. And I think it would be understandable. It would be an understandable statement on the part of Attorney Sanchez because the general understanding of a chief of staff and being the sole USEC of that agency, there would be an understanding that there would be certain that you would have overall supervision. Well, in relation to the SDOs and in line with the circular, we also understand that they have specific responsibilities only to them. But we can't help but be puzzled po, no? And I understand you're telling us now that it's compartmentalized, but still we would think that generally the head of the agency would course things through you. Although necessarily separate yung sa issue ng disbursement of the SDO, wouldn't other matters regarding the SDO, for example, administrative or human resources or logistics-wise, are they not coursed through you in relation to SDO? Because if I'm understanding it correctly, the job of the SDO would also entitle a lot of travel. As you've pointed out earlier, I mean, we've seen that maraming travel orders po ang ating SDO to the point na wala rin po siya today on the because of official travel po, no? So, in relation to that, there's a lot of intermingling pa rin. Although you might say compartmentalized, there are a lot of things that would go through you. I would understand the travel orders are signed by the Assistant Chief of Staff right now only because you were gone for the longest time. But generally, you would be signing off on the travel orders of the SDO. Would that be a fair statement?
Your Honor, I do not sign off on the travel orders of certain officials, or in this case, the SDO. May I just confirm kung sino lang yung pwede kong pirmahan na travel authority? Just the ODU heads ba? Oh. In my case, Your Honor, in the case of the Office of the Vice President, I can only sign off on the travels of Directors Lynn Sanchez and Director Baloro, who is the Director for Operations. All the other travel authorities, I do not sign off on them. It is HR. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, Attorney Lopez, you're telling us now that even sa pag-sign ng travel orders, may clustering pa po kayo? You are only authorized to issue travel orders for these two officials, and then everyone else has different parang boss? Ganun po ba yung sistema sa OVP? I hope you'd understand the confusion because we were presented before an organization and it all seemed to be like a pyramid, downstream lahat. Although there are clusters, everything's under you. But now we're seeing that there are limits to your responsibility. Are we understanding this correctly?
Your Honor, in the Office of the Vice President, we have a certain delegation of authority. There's only certain papers or documents that get into the Office of the Chief of Staff. And there are also others that go directly to the Office of Director Sanchez, as well as the Office of Director for Operations.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Lopez, could you please guide us through also? Ano po yung ibang clusters? I think you mentioned financial, appointment, protocol. Operations, of course, is what you're in charge of. What are the other clusters so that we have an idea? So, in line with that, Attorney Lopez, so what you're saying now is confirming what Attorney Poa told us earlier, that if you take a deeper look into the OVP, napaka-compartmentalized. He used the same term, actually. It's very compartmentalized sa OVP. So you are affirming that now po?
Yusek Poa said...
The compartmentalized po yung OVP. Sometimes, what the left hand does, the right hand doesn't know. Parang what Attorney Poa, while spokesperson, should be expected to know the ins and outs of the office. Because precisely as spokesperson, he will be relaying this information to the public. When we were asking him, he said compartmentalized po. He does not know about confidential funds. So you now, as the Chief of Staff, you are now confirming ng OVP po, despite the hierarchy that we see in the official organization chart, napaka-compartmentalized pala po yung OVP.
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor. I can only speak for my experience as the Chief of Staff. I cannot really speak for Attorney Poa, because there are certain areas in the OVP that I have no information on, or I cannot really have a direct hand on how it all operates. Your
So,
Honor.
Mr. Chair, in the operation of the OVP, rather than the usual hierarchy where it's a pyramid, where you have the large base with information or data or operations, which passes information upwards to select supervisors, upwards again to director level, ASEC, USEC, and finally to the VP. You're telling us now that the OVP operates in a hub and spoke type of situation wherein the OVP is central and then direct na lang po siya to the different. For example, OVP direct kay spokesperson, direct kay chief of staff, direct kay Attorney Sanchez for operating different clusters. And each cluster doesn't know what the other is doing.
I can only answer, Your Honor, on my role as the Chief of Staff.
Yes, sorry, and I'll just add to that point. No? And I understand you can only speak as the chief of staff because what you're telling us now is that you have been compartmentalized only as the chief of staff. So now you're telling me what I'm trying to present now, and if you would agree with that, is that the VP is very hands-on but treats you separately. So there's a, like I said, the hub and spoke. The VP is in the center, and she deals directly with Attorney Poa for other matters which you might not know, then directly with you for Chief of Staff of Operations for matters that only you know, directly to Attorney Sanchez for matters that only the finance would know, and you don't coordinate with each other.
There are cases, Your Honor, that is, in my experience, that is the case. For example, in the case of the spokesperson, it is not something that I am also privy to. The instructions for the OVP spokesperson. It happens, Your Honor, that way.
Thank you. I think this will be more, the compartmentalization of the OVP will be more relevant as we go on. But I'll just go back and focus on the SDOs. Thank you very much, Attorney Lopez.
Okay, thank
So
you.
yun po, we had an idea, although Attorney Sanchez mentioned that 3 persons were involved with the SDO, it seems to be narrowed down po, no? It looks to be, like with the DepEd, it's 2 people. We have SDO, Gina Acosta, and the head of agency, which is the Vice President. So, para sa kalaman po ng lahat, yung joint circular, it dictates there that the SDO is personally tasked with the disbursement and liquidation of confidential funds. And the head of agency is personally tasked to oversee. So what Attorney Lopez has told us now, by excusing herself or by separating herself from the operations of the confidential fund, it now affirms what is in the joint circular. It is down to these 2 people. And in other words, yung SDO po yung inaatasan ng batas natin na humawak at siguraduhin mapunta ang confidential funds sa naayon na confidential expenses. So this is all in line with the circular. So since we have questions ideally for the SDO, but given that Ms. Acosta is not here, I'd like to ask these questions to Attorney Camora. Apologies, Attorney Camora. All roads lead to the COA, so I'll have to ask you in relation to the circular. So we are affirming po, no?
You are recognized.
We affirm po that with the joint circular, it's usually the SDO. It's only the SDO who is tasked with the disbursement of the confidential funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To put more meat into this, we'd like to present po yung certification, if the Secretariat would be so kind as to flash it. The certifications for the OVP and the DepEd. Sorry, this is in relation to the certification for the confidential funds. I think we have one sample dated January 10, 2022. And for the DepEd, we have one sample dated March 31, 2023. There. So, Attorney Camora, through the Chair, most respectfully, ito po yung certification na sinasabi po natin. This is what is submitted together with the liquidation report. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And this is precisely provided under the joint circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
This is the exact language po, no? Is this an annex to the joint circular, or is there a format that is provided?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's Annex B of the joint circular.
So as Annex B, even if the correct signatories are there, for example, it's signed by the SDO and signed by the head of agency and properly notarized, if it has been altered in any way that any of the provisions under the certification are different, di nyo po tatanggapin. It has to be worded precisely as Annex B provides. Tama po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And it would require all of these signatures,
Yes,
such as
Mr.
the head of
Chair.
agency. So we take note po that that means that there are very specific things that are required to be certified as to be submitted with the liquidation report. And some of the things that stand out, it says here po, and I quote, incurred by the undersigned. So ibig sabihin po rito, it is the SDO that personally handles and disburses the money.
Yes, Mr.
That is
Chair.
basically the crux of the certification. And it just comes with other caveats.
Yes,
Like,
Mr.
for example, first, what is spent is in connection with the agency's intelligence and or confidential operations and activities. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And it also says that, two, it cannot be used for payment of salaries, wages, overtime, additional compensation, allowance, or other fringe benefits of officials and employees.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And third, that the expenditures are necessary and utilized for legal purposes.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So this means that the SDO should personally know the disbursements and the expenses incurred, and that he should have personal knowledge of all of this. That is basically what the certification is saying.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And this, hand in hand with the liquidation reports, would affirm again the responsibility of the SDO to disperse the confidential fund in accordance with the provisions of the circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Since the SEO handles the fund personally, it necessarily follows that he gives the money. Is that right? And I believe you answered this with Congresswoman Garin.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You mentioned actually that there could be possibly multiple SDOs.
They could designate many SDOs.
From all of our agencies po and departments and GOCCs that would have CIF or IF, how many po would have only one SDO?
Actually, Mr. Chair, most have only one SDO. It is the agencies that have multiple SDOs that are fewer.
Okay, so mostly have one SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And in that case, that SDO is the one in charge pa rin of paying, and it cannot be delegated further.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, for example, if we have an informer, which is basically what the CIF is for now, if you have an informer who needs to be paid, it is the SDO who personally pays this to them.
That is the presumption.
That is the
based
presumption.
on the certification, Mr. Chair.
And based on the requirements of the circular, it cannot be delegated. So the presumption should be reality. No?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And that is the understanding of the COA.
Yes,
that
Mr.
it is
Chair.
them who personally handles it. And it is them who personally receives the acknowledgement receipt.
Yes,
Is that
Mr.
clear?
Chair.
So the SDO cannot give it to another employee, for example, out of the 125 million, a specific, for example, compartmentalized daw, clustering. So ikaw sa rewards of medicine, ito, 20 million. And then siya na po yung in charge sa, and then whatever ARs that delegated person would receive would pass it on to the SDO. That is not allowed under the circular.
Even if he or she does that, he or she is the one ultimately accountable for those funds based on his or her certification. So, it's under his responsibility pa rin po.
Yes. So basically, command responsibility siya pa rin. But if that were the
Yes,
case, that is not in line with the circular because it should be personally disbursed by
Yes,
the SDO.
Mr. Chair.
Correct. So we can't be too sure that the SDO, if it were the case that it were delegated, the SDO would not be able to certify it in such a manner. Because
Yes,
supposedly
Mr.
it's saying there that he's the one who actually dispersed the money.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And this is the same for payments of rewards. This is not just for the handling of funds in general. Even for
Yes,
payments of
Mr.
rewards and information, it goes the same way.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
The SDO gives payment directly to the recipient, and the recipient is supposed to give the AR or any DEPs that are in relation to that. Ms. Camora, Attorney Camora, so these acknowledgement receipts were submitted by the OVP and the DepEd to COA. This is the proof, this is the documentary evidence of payment that is required by the circular. And now we have that understanding that you've confirmed now that the SDO personally handles the same. So they handle the funds and they handle personally the DEPs.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So if there's any doubt to the confidential funds, if there is any doubt at all to the DEPs, any doubts to the ARs, which have been hammered down in the last hearing and now in this hearing, this all points down to the SDO. This is their personal responsibility under the joint circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, for example, one of the things that we pointed out last time in relation to the dates, if there is any problem with the date of the AR, it should have passed to the SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Because unlike, for example, in our usual po natin, Attorney Camora, let's say, in a usual transaction, pumunta ka sa mall, bumili ka ng pagkain, magbibigay ng resibo, you wouldn't pay a second thought on that OR because usually you don't have to liquidate it anywhere. It's just a piece of paper. But as an SDO in which you have a personal responsibility, nakataya pera mo pa rin kasi nakaband ka po to the Treasury.
Yes, Mr.
So
Chair.
you would have to check and make sure that all of the ARs are accurate,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
including the date.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Since one of the responsibilities under the joint circular is to disburse the CF and IF in accordance with the provisions of the circular.
Yes. So in the circular, it requires an acknowledgement receipt, and an acknowledgement receipt would require the date. So the date having been filled in for the AR and received by the SDO has the responsibility to make sure that it is correct.
Yes, Mr. Chair, although the requirement is documentary evidence.
Documentary
of
evidence.
payment.
So I'm sorry, but yes, the AR as the DEP
Yes,
would be
Mr. Chair.
required to have gone under scrutiny of the SDO. So if we had 158 ARs which have a supposed typographical error, shouldn't the SDO have caught on since they personally gave the money and received the receipt? He would check the receipt. Kung tama yung pangalan, may signature, tama yung purpose, and the date. So the 158 times na mali yung date, supposedly 158 times na dumaan po ito sa SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So with that, we'd like to ask the COA. I know we've asked this before already, but we're looking into the responsibility of the COA. You've already mentioned many times that the ICFA would only be concerned with the submission of the DEPs and that you wouldn't look no further because generally parang ministerial na lang to a point. But shouldn't it have raised some red flags po? Especially now in hindsight, yung 158 with typographical errors ng dates.
Because of our hearings here, we're kind of looking into this, that we should be a little stricter on our audit from now on. So.
We understand po, no, you mentioned before that one of the limitations of your office is manpower. And I think
Yes,
one
Mr.
thing that the
Chair.
committee will be working on in aid of legislation is to strengthen po the COA, that you would have the proper manpower support to make sure that this does not happen again. I think
Yes.
that's one thing, personally, this representation would like to push forward for the consideration of the committee. But with that said, so I hope now the ICFA would take into special consideration not only the impossibility of typographical errors, the frequency of it occurring, the time span in which it happens. And of course now, as mentioned by Congressman Adjong, we've seen earlier that there are problems even to the multiple names with different signatures. This should have raised a red flag. And of course, the bogus names that were raised by Congressman Acop, such as Mary Grace Piatos. So these are things that I hope that the ICFA would be more stringent with. But there's one more matter, aside from that, which we have brought up from the previous hearing, that I hope that you could consider. Upon studying po yung DEPs natin, and we already know that there's a question about the time span in which that it was dispersed. Alam natin, questionable yung 11 days, na 5 days pa nga po ay holiday, dispersed po ito lahat. But one more thing we have to consider, now that you have affirmed to us, now that we understand it better, na yung SDO is personally in charge of dispersing the funds, we collated po yung ating mga DEPs. And we've seen po, for example, this is, I think, the DepEd. So this would be by Mr. Fajardo. For the, I believe this is the first quarter of 2023, submitted on the 31st of March, there were disbursements every day po, no? Since the release of the cash. And that disbursements, they would not go less than 10 times a day po. If you could see po in the chart, this is what we've seen. You would notice that the ARs, it would say the address or location. This is one thing particularly with the DepEd. Aside from the name, the signature, and the date, meron pong locations. So, on February 21, 2023, or the very next day after the SDO encashed the 37.5 million in checks, lumabas po sa acknowledgement receipts that SDO Fajardo made 7 disbursements already. This is the day after, in 7 different locations. And the locations are Malolos, Davao, San Francisco, Agusan del Sur, Makati City, Negros Oriental, Negros Occidental, and Davao City. So the very next day, after, I would assume, the check was issued, it was encashed in Land Bank under the Shaw branch. Tama po ba for DepEd? Or
DepEd branch.
The DepEd branch. So the DepEd branch, that is in what city po here in NCR?
Pasig, sir.
In Pasig po na encash, and immediately the next day, he traveled to these 7 places and have these 7 ARs. Did this not raise a red flag of the impossibility of this occurring?
Well, it does, sir. Although during our review, somehow we just accepted the acknowledgement receipt.
For reasons you've already stated earlier po, no,
Yes,
Attorney
po.
Camora. In addition to this, if you go to the day of the first quarter that had the most disbursements, which is March 15, 2023, SDO Fajardo supposedly made 26 disbursements in the following locations: Davao del Sur, Surigao del Sur, Oriental Mindoro, Laguna, Zamboanga del Sur, Cebu, Ifugao, Antique, Batanes, Pampanga, Legazpi, Lanao del Norte, Batangas, Tarlac, Metro Manila, Samar, Davao de Oro, Agusan del Norte, Davao del Sur, Davao de Oro, Laguna, Cavite, Surigao del Norte. Attorney Camora, let's give him a helicopter. I don't think he'll do that in one day. So it really raises a question. How did SDO Fajardo certify and say that he personally disbursed this? Buti na lang po yung DepEd ARs have location. So it really shows us kung saan po sila. Unlike the DepEd ARs, yung OVP po wala. Yung OVP would only have the name, the purpose, the name, the signature, and the date. That's it. And the amount. Pero here we could see in DepEd, it seems to be really impossibility. So you could see the theme, not really the theme po, no, but what we're driving at here. Earlier, according to Congresswoman Garin, and I understand her frustration, there is the physical impossibility of the delivery and encashment of the cash. The questions regarding that, surrounding where it was brought. And then now, even the physical impossibility of the disbursement. Yun naman po yung tanong dito. If truly SDO certifies that he or she is the only person and has personal knowledge of disbursement, has personal knowledge, has gone through the DEPs, how do we explain this? It looks like from north to south, tip to tip po natang Pilipinas. By Batanes pa rin po. So these are just some of the questions that we have. And if we look at the chart earlier, it happens multiple times. For February 25, there were 21 disbursements across 18 different localities. February 27, 21 disbursements across 18 localities. March 3, and the list goes on. And if you notice the chart, every day po yun. Every day po may disbursement. So it really raises the question po, no?
Yes, Mr.
About
Chair.
the legal, the veracity of the certification. We're now seeing the consequences of our current format that we have, that a simple signature which the COA just blindly, not to fault you, again, we understand the reasons that you have, that you lack manpower and all that. But napakahirap po to because we're talking about the most difficult to account for, confidential intelligence funds po, no? So, if I may continue, Attorney Camora, and again, I understand frustration. I wanted to ask this to the SDO personally. I think they would have been able to answer. But on the light side na lang po, to make the most of the information that we have, at least on the side of the COA, that you'd understand the frustration of this committee, and that you'd understand po where we'd want to proceed with this. It goes the same with the OVP. If I may continue, Mr. Chair, the pattern of the OVP is that even if it does not have the locality or the address, the disbursements are really dubious and curious because it really makes use of these disbursements in a way that you would find hard to believe. Just the number of disbursements given in the number of days, it really raises some questions po, no? Like for example, on December 23 of December, 23rd of December of 2022, this is close as in relation to what Congressman Acop mentioned. There were a lot of holidays in those 11 days. And in fact, Noche Buena would have been the #1 thing that people would be preparing for. But on the eve of Christmas, or the day before, when you would be preparing for the eve of Christmas, on December 23, at least 103 individuals received a total amount of 15 million pesos. I mean, just 15 million pesos for 103 individuals. If truly the SDO is certifying that personally I think this is SDO Acosta, she disbursed this, it really raises the question kung the possibility po, no, of how they did this. So, and this would include a bunch of things. No? It's very much payment of reward, payment of information, medicine. The safe houses were also included there. Given the various clusterings, if you would call it that, parang it leads to the, I would not say impossibility, the improbability of the AR submitted. So I think we really need a strict scrutiny po, no, of the DEPs that are being submitted. I'd just like to point out that based on this study, the days where the OVP gave confidential funds, over 100 recipients, all happened in 2022. And this is the time that had the 11-day period. So you could see na I don't know if it's intentional, pero minadali po talaga. There was really quick disbursement. And in line with that, just one last question, Attorney Camora, which was brought up by Congressman Acop. He was driving the point with Attorney Sanchez that you could obligate the confidential funds. If you don't consume, for example, because this is cash advance system, you advanced 125 for December of 2022, and you've only consumed, for example, 100 million. Does that mean mawawala na po yung 25 million, or does it carry on to the next quarters? Sorry, let's not do 2022 kasi last month na yun. Let's say for yung provided na CIF. If in the first quarter of 125 million, na consume lang po is or what's justified is 100 million, what is the effect for the second quarter? Can they disburse 150 million, or are they limited still to the quarterly limit of 125?
Mr. Chair, the cash advances for the whole year. So as long as the cash advances are within the year and the last cash advance was liquidated, they could cash advance again for the next like quarter or the next quarter, since most of them do it quarterly.
So for example, on the 31st of March, I've consumed 100 and I justify with the liquidation report of 100 million. I still need to justify the 25 left, even beyond March 31. That would be allowed for the first quarter?
Can you repeat po?
Sorry. So yung first quarter po, meron tayong cash advance of
Yes,
125 million. Ang nakonsumo lang po ng opisina ay 100 million lamang. May 25 million po na balance. Does that mean I can still justify the 25 million after March 31?
No, Mr. Chair. If it has been cash advanced for that period and the amount that was unutilized should be returned by the SDO.
It should be returned to the SDO.
Yes,
Yung
Mr.
sinasabi po ni
Since
Congressman
yung liquidation
Acop,
po is yung buong amount po dapat.
but it could be obligated in that time. It doesn't have to be dispersed. You could obligate for the 25 million pa hindi naman return. I believe that was the point that Congressman Acop was making.
Pwede naman po
Pwede.
yata. As long as it is still within the year of the it's still within the year, so yung cash advance is still for the year.
Thank you, Attorney Comora. So yun lang po, just to manifest, it really drives the point that it seems to be, there are questions po with the timing and the accompanying DEPs, and I'm sure that we're still going to go back to this. There were other questions, but unfortunately, wala po yung ating SDO, so I'll have to hold on to that. Mr. Chair, with that, I'd yield to other interpellators. Maraming salamat po.
Just an interjection, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Congressman Franz Castro.
Yes, so excellent, no, yung pinakita nating pag-analyze nung utilization noong confidential funds in 2023 and even in 125 in 2022. The possibility, the improbability, physically, nung pagbabayad ng SDO nito doon sa mga binanggit natin na kung ito man ay reward or whatever, or reward. So ano ngayon ang gagawin ng Mr. Chair? Gagawin ng COA doon na obvious na sa pag-analyze natin, even Attorney Camora, nagsasabi siya na parang imposible. Tama ba 'yon? In one date, in one day, in different places, magagawa ba ng SDO na pumunta para bayaran yung mga sinasabi natin na dapat na bayaran in a day? Sabi nyo kanina at sabi natin kanina, no, imposible. So that is yung sa pagre-review ninyo nung ipinasa ng mga acknowledgement receipt, etc. So Mr. Chair, ang tanong dito, kasi hindi lang tayo matatapos na ito na yung nangyari, parang nakakatawa na talaga eh. Ano yung SDO na yon, Mr. Chair? Lumipad mula sa isang lugar patungo sa isang lugar, in eight places lumipad. Kung siya lang talaga yung nagdi-disburse. So talagang parang pinapatawa tayo, no? Pinapatawa ang taong bayan ng Office of the Vice President na nagagawa ito, no? So ano ngayon ang gagawin ng COA? Are you still going to accept those acknowledgement receipt or those na mga disbursement na tingin natin ay panloloko lang, niloloko na tayo, 'di ba? Niloloko tayo, taong bayan. So anong gagawin po ng COA, Mr. Chair? Gusto kong malaman, are you going to i-review nyo ba ulit? Ibabalik nyo yan? Or kailangan nyo nang magdesisyon ngayon kung dapat yan na yung pondo na ito ay ibalik yan sa pondo ng taong bayan? So ano po yung pwedeng moving forward doon sa ipinisend po ni Representative Raj Gutierrez? Mr. Chair, anong gagawin ng COA doon?
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Camora.
Mr. Chair, actually we are thankful to the body for pointing this out to us, since for us naman po as auditors, we presume this as yung regular ano po, but since these things have been pointed out, I think we will be basing our reviews na based on what we have discussed here in this hearing. And as to the cases po ng sa OVP and DepEd, yung sa 2023 especially po, AOM pa lang po yung status nung audit actions namin, and under review pa rin po yung mga compliance nila. So we will take po in consideration lahat po ng napag-usapan natin and be more circumspect in our review. Although mahirap since yun nga po marami pong transactions, but moving onwards siguro po, i-apply po namin lahat ng mga learnings namin dito sa hearings na to. Although mahirap po talaga.
Kahit na common sense, i-apply nyo dyan. No? Kahit na common sense, Attorney Camora, i-apply nyo dyan.
Yes
No?
po.
Talagang imposible na talagang ito maaring ibinulsa, di ba? O maaring kung saan na napunta. Kaya imposible yung nangyari na sa isang araw pumunta ka sa iba't ibang probinsya para mag-disburse.
Yes, Mr.
No? Imposible
Yes, Mr. Chair.
'yon. At gamitin naman natin yung yung kahit na konsensya or kahit na common sense para diyan po. At gusto natin na dahil ito ay under review, sinasabi niyo hanggang kailan po, Mr. Chair, yung review nito?
Hindi pa po namin masabi, Mr. Chair, since ang mga involved po ay kasama po dito sa hearing madalas. So, we will try po as soon as kung...
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I hope yung COA would be prudent enough, at saka talagang tignan nyo talaga kung paano ginagamit ng Office of the Vice President at saka ng DepEd before itong confidential funds. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, with the indulgence of Congresswoman Luistro, the Chair would like to recognize Senior Deputy Speaker Don Gonzales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address my question lang na three item lang kay Attorney Zulaika Lopez. Ma'am, who is your Assistant COS? Who is your Assistant Chief of Staff po, ma'am?
The Assistant Chief of Staff is Mr. Lemuel Ortonio, Your Honor, Mr. Chair.
Sino po ang pumipirma sa travel order ni tawag dito, si Lopez, si Ordoña? Nasa abroad. Ano pangalan nun?
Ako po
Hindi,
yun.
yung pangalan nito? Sino sa abroad? Sino pumipirma sa mga travel order ng office?
In the OVP, Your Honor, there is a delegation of authority. There are certain officials that I signed for in their travel authority. There are also other officials that Mr. Ortonio signs for.
No, who signed the travel authority pala of Gina Acosta?
Mr. Lemuel, no? In the travel authority shown to me, Your Honor, it is Mr. Lemuel Ortonio.
Okay. Number 2 question, ma'am. Kung tama po, hindi po niyo pwedeng i-recall yung travel order ni Gina Acosta to attend the hearing as Chief of Staff, ma'am?
Anong date na kay Gina?
Ikaw, Ma'am, ang Chief of Staff, di ba?
Yes, that is correct. No, I was just, I was also asking Director Lin kung anong dates po siya yung covered ng Travel Authority. Okay. We will consider, Your Honor. We will consider.
No, you just answer my question, ma'am. If yes, you can recall the travel order of Miss Acosta, ma'am. You are the boss.
I was not the person, Your Honor, who issued the Travel Authority.
Precisely po. Precisely po.
Yes,
So
but we
meaning
will-
to say, if you cannot, if not, if you cannot answer, they're not really using the travels. Umiiwas lang po sa pag-attend nitong hearing na to. Tama ho ba?
Your Honor, I cannot, like I mentioned earlier, kakabalik ko lang ho. I will have to study and look into the matter.
Okay, I have two questions. Number one, kung yes, you can recall the travel authority of Ma'am Gina Acosta. And number two, kung hindi, iniiwasan lang po umattend dito sa ating hearing ng good government. Tama ho ba, Ms.
Your Honor, as to the earlier suggestion on your end to recall the Travel Authority, I will look into it, Your Honor, and consider. But as I mentioned earlier, kakabalik ko lang ho sa opisina, and the Travel Authority is not something that I saw and have gone through. Ngayon ko lang po nakita through the phone of Director Sanchez. But we will consider Your Honor's recommendation.
Yes, please, give me the date lang po kung kailan pinirmahan ng Assistant COS nyo yung Travel Authority ni Gina Acosta.
Just a moment. All right. Per travel order number 2024-1036, in the interest of public service, with Your Honor, I would like to read the entire travel order in toto. Gina F. Acosta is hereby authorized to travel on official business to continue the monitoring and facilitation of the preparations and rollout of OVP anniversary activities in various areas on November 18 to 22, 24. Then, while outside her official station, she's authorized to collect allowance for daily travel expenses, incur actual travel expenses in accordance with Executive Order number 77/2019, chargeable against OVP funds, subject to existing budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations, including but not limited to the internal financial controls and spending guidelines. The date is November 14, 2024, Your Honor.
Attorney, ano trabaho po ng SDO? Di ba SDO po si Gina Acosta? If meaning SDO, siya ang disbursement officer ng OVP. Bakit siya ang umihikot regarding for the anniversary of the OVP?
Okay.
Meaning to say November 4, 18 to 22.
Okay.
Outside the country, Uto?
No, Your Honor. It is within the country. It is within the country. As regards to the question, earlier question, what is the work of Ms. Gina Acosta?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, may I know what is, just a moment. What is? Okay. Your Honor, Ms. Gina Acosta is a Vice Presidential Officer 6, Staff 6 of the OVP. And as such, apart from being an SDO, she is also responsible for, she has also other tasks and functions, Your Honor.
So she's concurrent. So is staff 6 and then she's an SDO also. Concurrent siya. Office of the Vice President and then
I understand
SDO.
the SDO is a as a designation only, Your Honor. She is VPSO, that is her position title.
Okay, thank you. Pero, ma'am, pwedeng ma-recall mo yung travel order niya para mag-attend siya sa next hearing, si Ms. Gina Acosta.
Okay, we will consider, Your Honor, the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.